Okay, our learning today is Le'ilui Nishmat Nisim ben Miriam, Miriam bat Rachel, Halfon ben Miriam, Rachel Chaya bat Miriam, Shoshana bat Miriam, Rachel Chaya bat Miriam, Yitzhak ben Perlina, Yeshaya ben Godayeta, Gershon Chanoch ben Baruch Mordechai, Leah bat Avraham Eliezer, Maran Rabbi Chaim Ovadia ben Georgia, Chacham Mordechai Semach ben Mazal, Rav Shemuel Yaakov ben Rav Yitzhak Batityahu, Kalman Aharon ben Bela, Ruach Adonai Tinichanan, Began Aiden, Amen. Our learning today is also dedicated to the Refuah Shlema of Yosef ben Shoshana, Mariza bat Shoshana, Esther bat Doba, and Abraham ben Turkia. Elna refana lahem, elna refana lahem, elna refana lahem. B'toch kol sha'ar chalei Am Yisrael. Amen. Okay, we are holding in Hilchot Tefillin. We're in Siman Chaf Hey, the Torah obligation to don Tefillin, and we're holding on Seif Dalid. Okay, so last time we had discussed that the mitzvah of tefillin is a daily mitzvah. It applies every day, and that Jews are obligated wherever they live. Even if they live outside of the land of Israel, they're still obligated in the mitzvah of tefillin. We also mentioned that somebody who's poor does not have to go begging door to door in order to fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin, but he must borrow the money for tefillin. We also mentioned that although he has no obligation to go door to door, if a person is going to door anyways to beg for his parnasah, then he should also beg for the additional money to get the tefillin. We don't make a person go down to the level of begging if he's not already there. But once he's already there, so then he may as well just continue begging and be able to get the mitzvah of tefillin as well. So that's what we've said thus far. For now in Seif Dalid. Seif Dalid is the halacha of not to depend on borrowing from other people. Halacha Dalid says, Mi sheyado maseget liknot tefillin. Somebody who has the ability to acquire tefillin, he can afford it. But he relies on that which he borrows the tefillin from other people. Because we said previously that somebody who's poor can fulfill his mitzvah by borrowing the tefillin from others. So he might think, what do I have to buy tefillin for? Let me just borrow the tefillin from others. So the Beit Hadash wrote that the punishment for such a person is very, very large. So, okay, that's brought down in the Mishnah Berurah over there in, where would be over there? Where did we quote previously? Previously, we quoted Sif Katan Bet. Okay, so the Beit Hadash declared that a terrible punishment awaits someone who can afford to purchase his own tefillin but does not, and instead relies on borrowing a set from others each and every day after they're finished using them. The Mishnah Berurah in Siman Chaf Hey Seif Bet cited this warning. The full text of the Beit Hadash's warning is, one should not follow the practice of some people in our times who do not own a set of tefillin, but rely on their friends to lend them tefillin after using them to fulfill the mitzvah. It often happens that they will not have any tefillin when they have to recite the Shema and the Amidah. These people are in store for a terrible punishment. The Gemara in Masechet Sukkah, Daf Membet Amud Aleph, teaches that one is obligated to purchase a set of tefillin for his son long before he is bar mitzvah, in order to train him in fulfilling this mitzvah. Certainly, then, each person is obligated to purchase a set of tefillin for his own use. Meaning, obviously, if you have to purchase a set of tefillin for your son, even before he's bar mitzvah, then for sure for yourself, who is bar mitzvah and is obligated in the mitzvah, obviously you have to buy yourself a set of tefillin. The Mishnah Berurah added, furthermore, it often happens that the borrower does not fulfill the mitzvah at all with borrowed tefillin, and he even recites the beracha in vain, transgressing the sin of lo tisah. This is because the straps of the tefillin shel rosh are often tied in a loop too large or too small for the head of the person borrowing them, and he's too lazy to adjust the knot to fit him, or the owner will not allow him to adjust it. The Piri Megadim declared in one place that if tefillin are placed on one's head in the wrong position, it's the same as leaving the tefillin in the kuracha. So another problem with borrowing tefillin is that many times in the tefillin shalosh, we have the strap set in a particular way to fit our head. And if somebody else borrows it, their heads do not generally match exactly the same size as ours. And so the tefillin might be a little bit below the hairline, or might be hanging a little bit below the nape of the neck, different areas, and therefore the tefillin will not be fitting correctly. And to just have tefillin on your head and it's not fitting in the spot of tefillin, if you put it in the wrong spot, you don't fulfill the mitzvah. In Machane Israel in Perek Hey, he cited the halacha that if someone is too poor to own a set of tefillin, he should borrow one from others. However, he added that the correct procedure is not to rely on borrowing from others. Instead, he should ask his close friends and relatives to help him by purchasing a set of tefillin for him. If someone chooses to rely on borrowing a set of tefillin every day, it might be very difficult for him to fulfill his obligation. This is because the straps of the tefillin shel rosh are not tied to fit this person's head, and they slip down onto his forehead. In such a case, he does not fulfill the mitzvah. Instead, he is guilty of reciting the blessing in vain. Excuse me 1 minute. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so again, we saw the same idea from the Machane Israel in Perek Hey, where he says that a person really should ask his friends and close relatives to help him purchase a set of tefillin, and then he'll be able to fulfill the mitzvah like that. But if he were to borrow the tefillin, you have the same problem that the straps may be in the wrong place, and a person could be making a beracha levatala. Since the Mishnah Berurah's complaint is that the borrower is often too lazy to adjust the knot to fit him, it seems that if he would bother to adjust it, then he would fulfill the mitzvah properly. Although he intends to change it back to the owner's size as soon as he finishes using it. When he ties it to fit himself for the time being, he can fulfill the mitzvah. Although the halacha demands that tefillin strap be tied with permanent knots, the knot into which he ties the tefillin is considered a permanent knot, since it's the type of knot that people would leave tied indefinitely. You can see more about that in the Biur Halacha in Siman Shin Yud Zayin Seif Aleph. So he just points out here that you might think that by borrowing tefillin, that even if you change the knot, even if you adjust the straps to fit your head, you might still not fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin with the borrowed tefillin, because the knot has to be permanent. And it would seem that if your plan is to adjust the tefillin that you're borrowing, presumably you have to adjust them back to the size of your friend from whom you're borrowing. And therefore, it's not considered a permanent knot. And therefore, you wouldn't fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin. But he says, no, that's not the case. We do consider it a permanent knot. Because even though your intent is to change it back, the fact is that the type of knot is a knot that is permanent, regardless of your kavanah, of whether or not you're going to put it back. The type of knot that you're tying is considered a permanent knot. People normally leave that knot indefinitely. So even though you, in your particular case, planning to do differently, that doesn't invalidate your mitzvah in that case. Okay, so how about when traveling? The Mishnah Berurah in Siman Kuf Yud in Seif Chaf added that in consideration of these issues, whenever someone travels, he should make sure to take his own talit and tefillin with him. In fact, even if he plans to return home on the very same day, he should still take them with him in case something happens that forces him to stay longer than he planned. Unfortunately, many people purposely travel without taking their tefillin, hoping to borrow from the residents at their destination. And this is considered a sinful behavior, since all too often they will miss the mitzvah of reciting the Shema and Shaharit on time because they're waiting for a talit and tefillin to become available to them. Furthermore, when they borrow tefillin, they use whatever they get, without regard for whether or not the loop of the tefillin shel rosh fits properly on their heads. So just another point that obviously, while one can fulfill the mitzvah with borrowed tefillin, it's very difficult to do so. So one should strive with every effort possible to avoid borrowing tefillin. So part of that will mean being proactive, and that when we take trips, we make sure to pack our tefillin and our talit, and not to rely that we're just going to borrow when we get there. Okay, any questions before we move on to the next subject?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right, perfect. So let's move on then to talit kodem tefillin. The next section is going to discuss putting the talit first. So we put on the tefillin after we put on our talit. Halacha Hey says, "Achar shelavesh talit mitzuyatz yaniach tefillin." After a person puts on the talit with tzitzit on it, then he puts on the tefillin. V'hata'am shemakdimim hatzitzit letefillin. The reason that we give precedence to the tzitzit over the tefillin, mishum, is because shema'alin bakodesh, we go up in the level of sanctity, in the level of kiddusha, meaning to say the tefillin are on a higher level of sanctity of kiddusha than are the tzitzit. Therefore, a person puts the tzitzit on first, and that way he is going up in level of kiddusha, because the next level of kiddusha that he'll encounter will be the tefillin. This is brought down in Shulchan Aruch in Seif Aleph. We have a picture here at the back. I'm going to pull up the picture so we can show you. It's in Timuna Memhat. Okay, let's see what's this picture they're referring to. Here. Okay, it's just a picture of somebody putting on their talit. It's nothing fancy. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's just the idea that a person should put on the talit first. Okay, so after putting on a talit with kosher tzitzit, it is time to don the tefillin. We begin with the mitzvah of a lesser sanctity and then ascend to one of a higher level of sanctity. So let's discuss that a little more. Donning the talit before the tefillin. The Arba'a Turim ruled, after putting on one's talit, one should don tefillin immediately, so that they will be on him when he recites the Shema. The Bet Yosef deduced from this that one is supposed to don the talit and afterwards put on the tefillin. Again, let's read this again. The Arba'a Turim ruled, after putting on one's talit, one should don tefillin immediately, so that they will be on him when he recites the Shema. The Bet Yosef deduced from this that one is supposed to don the talit and afterwards put on the tefillin. He cited the Nimukei Yosef, offering two reasons for fulfilling the mitzvot in this order. First of all, the mitzvah of tzitzit is superior, since it is equal to all the mitzvot combined, and therefore it has precedence. Second, we fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzit more often, since we wear talit every day of the week, including Shabbat and Yom Tov. The general rule is that a mitzvah performed more often has precedence over a mitzvah performed less often. Tadir, v'she'eno tadir, tadir kodem. For these reasons, we must put on the talit before the tefillin. This is the opinion of the Rabbeinu Yonah as well. Furthermore, the Bet Yosef cited the Agur, stating in the name of the Zohar HaKadosh that it is strictly forbidden to put on tefillin before putting on a talit. So we've given three reasons so far. The Torah says clearly that a person should put on the talit first and only afterwards put on the tefillin. So the Bet Yosef brings down two reasons in the name of the Nimukei Yosef. Number one, first of all, tzitzit is equal to all of the mitzvot, whereas tefillin is not. It's considered like 8 mitzvot. So therefore, therefore the mitzvah of tzitzit is considered a higher level of kiddusha. And ma'alin v'kodesh ve'im moridin. We go up in the level of kiddusha. Second of all, the mitzvah of tzitzit applies all the time, whereas the mitzvah of tefillin is only on certain days. Therefore, again, we would say tadir v'she'eno tadir, tadir kodem. And we go with the more frequent mitzvah first, which is tzitzit. Third of all, the Agur quotes the Zohar Kadosh, saying that one is not allowed to put on the tefillin until after he puts on his talit. So we'll see what that means. I don't think there's any prohibition on putting on a. I don't think that we hold the halacha in practice that a person is not allowed to put tefillin on until after he puts on tzitzit, because we'll see later on if a person accidentally put on his tefillin first, he doesn't have to take it off and then put on his tzitzit. Though I did hear a thing that I think the Mekubalim do recommend that they do that, probably based on the Zohar Kadosh. So I guess we'll see more about that as we get more into it. But definitely, it's very clear that the tzitzit should take precedence. The Sha'agat Aryeh in Ot Chafhei contested the argument cited by the Nimukei Yosef. The mitzvah of tzitzit, he pointed out, is not an absolute obligation unless someone is wearing a four-cornered garment. We are definitely obligated to wear tefillin every day, on the other hand. Thus, the mitzvah of tefillin is more pressing than that of talit, even though the mitzvah of tzitzit is equal to all the other mitzvot combined. Likewise, one cannot argue that the mitzvah of tzitzit is tadir in contrast to tefillin, since there is no obligation to wear talit altogether. So you see, the Sha'agat Aryeh has argument on the two things. The Nimukei Yosef, we said number one, that the mitzvah of tzitzit is greater because it's equal to all the mitzvot. So he says, in regards to that point, that's not such a good proof that it should take precedence, because while it might seem like it's greater because it's equal to all the mitzvot, the truth is that you don't even have to do that mitzvah at all. It's a voluntary mitzvah, whereas tefillin is a mandatory mitzvah. And we know that mandatory mitzvot, people who are commanded, are greater than people who are not commanded. So in the same way, it should be that the mitzvah of tefillin should be greater than the mitzvah of tzitzit. Second of all, the Sha'agat Aryeh says, in regards to the second point of the Nimukei Yosef, that it's tadir v'she'eno tadir kodem, and the mitzvah of tzitzit is more tadir. He says it's not more tadir, because the truth is you don't have to wear a talit ever. The only time you have to wear a talit is if you're wearing a four-cornered garment, you have to put tzitzit on it, but you don't have any obligation to wear it. Whereas tefillin, you have to wear it every day. So if you're really contrasting which one is more frequent, in truth, from a technical standpoint, the tefillin is more frequent. So he argues on both those points. The Yad Aharon and the Birkei Yosef pointed out that the Zohar states clearly that tefillin have precedence over tzitzit. In his Nitzosei Orot, however, Harav Haida cited Harav Moshe Zakut, explaining that although the Zohar teaches that tefillin are more sacred than tzitzit, it agrees that one must put on the talit before putting on the tefillin. So we have definitely Kabbalistically, it seems that according to the Kabbalah, the tefillin are of a higher sanctity, but nonetheless, the tzitzit must come first. The Shulchan Aruch states that one should put first on the talit and then put on the tefillin. Because of ma'alin b'kodesh, we ascend the levels of sanctity in order. That is, when we have several sacred acts to perform, we should first perform the one with the least sanctity and then proceed to the one with greater sanctity. In the Bet Yosef, Maran did not mention this reason. The source for this new reason is Dinim Vehalachot, Ot Chaf of Mahari Weil. It is possible that Maran did not rely on the reasons cited by the Nimukei Yosef because he was bothered by the same questions that the Sha'agat Aryeh asked. Nevertheless, the Sha'agat Aryeh and the Dagul Merevava challenged this reason as well, of Ma'alin Bakodesh, since we are taught in Masechet Zivahim, Daf Pei Tet Amud Aleph, that on the contrary, we are to first perform the mitzvah with the greatest sanctity and then perform the one with the lesser sanctity. The Mishnah Biura in Biur Halacha to Chaf Hei Seif Aleph reconciled this, citing the Eliyahu Rabbah and Harav Eliyahu of Vilna. They explain that the concept of Ma'alin Bakodesh used in this halacha is not a reference to the mitzvot being performed, but to the sanctity of the person performing them. The person climbs to a certain level of sanctity by wrapping his body in a talit, and then he fastens himself to the concept of God's unity by tying the tefillin onto his arm and head. This is actually the teaching of the Holy Zohar, cited by the Bet Yosef later in this siman. See the comment of the Kaf HaChaim Sofer in Siman Chaf Hei Seif Zayin. A similar rationale can be found in Halko Shel Yedid on page 21b, authored by Harav Yedidya Shemuel Tarika. So eventually we come down to Shulchan Aruch is saying Ma'alin Bakodesh Ve'en Moridin. So we have a problem with that. The level of tefillin should come first, because by mitzvot we say you really go after the mitzvah with the higher kedusha. So once you say that tefillin is higher, then you have to start with tefillin, not with tzitzit. So what he explains is that when we say ma'alin bakodesh here, we're not referring to the mitzvot. It's not that the mitzvah of tefillin is necessarily a greater mitzvah. Because like we have the arguments of the Nimukei Yosef and others that really it's not so clear that the mitzvah of tefillin is greater than the mitzvah of tzitzit. But nonetheless, we still have to put the tzitzit first. The reason being is that Kabbalistically, on a higher level, when a person wraps himself in the talit, he acquires a certain level of sanctity, of Kiddusha. Once he's achieved that level, he can now achieve the second level of Tefillin, which raises him even higher. But if he does it out of that order, he doesn't accomplish that. And so therefore he has to put the tzitzit first, not to be going up in Kiddusha in level of mitzvot, but to be going up in Kiddusha in his intrinsic Kiddusha. And so that's why we put the tzitzit first, is because the level that one acquires through putting on the tzitzit is the prerequisite for the level that he's going to achieve in tefillin, which is a much higher level. Okay. So now we get to putting on the tefillin after the tefillin. The Nimyokei Yosef added, there are those who put on the talit only after putting on the tefillin. Some people do it in the opposite. They put their talit on only after they put the tefillin. This is because the talit is an outer garment, which a person dons after putting on his entire outfit. It only makes sense, therefore, to put the tefillin on first, since the talit is meant to be the last item one puts on. Otherwise, one would possibly be guilty of transgressing the rule of me'en ma'avirin al ha-mitzvot, that we don't pass over the mitzvot. If you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, you do it first. In fact, even those people who wear only a talit katan should wear it above the other clothes so that the tzitzit will remind them not to stray after your hearts and your eyes. That's the opinion of the Nimukei Yosef. The Nimukei Yosef says that some people do it the opposite. They put their talit on last because the talit goes on your outer garments, whereas your tefillin you put on the inside. Many people roll their sleeves over the tefillin, it should be hidden, right? It goes directly on the skin, whereas the talit you wear over all your clothes. So presumably if you're getting dressed, you would put on your clothes as you're putting on your shirt, you would put your tefillin on. Then you put your shirt on, you put on your, or your jacket, maybe, and then you'd put on your talit. So if you would go in as you're getting dressed, you're going through that order. If you would put the talit on first, then you're uncovering, pulling off your jacket, like we see people do in the synagogues. That's our custom. The way that we do it is we take off our jackets and we put on the tefillin on the arm, and then we put the sleeve back over it and cover it with the tzitzit. So some people do it the other way. He also mentions here that their custom is to wear the talit katan over their clothing in order that they should look at it like the Hasidim do. We'll see maybe another time. We're not really learning Hilchot tzitzit here, but we've learned previously, I believe, in maybe in the Sephardic Halachot that we do, that the custom of the Sephardic Jews is to tuck the tzitzit in and to wear them, that the talit katan should be totally covered and should not come out. That's our custom. According to this opinion brought by the Nimukei Yosef, people who wear the talit katan underneath their clothes, as we do in the Sephardic community, should put it on before putting on tefillin, but they should leave the talit gadol for last. The Bet Yosef challenged this opinion, however, explaining that there's no reason to say that by postponing one's donning of the tefillin, one would be guilty of disobeying the rule of ein ma'avirin al ha-mitzvot. The Darkei Moshe in Siman Chaf Hei Seif Aleph dismissed this argument, explaining that since the tefillin are worn on one's bare skin, they automatically are in line to be put on before the talit, which is an overgarment. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know. Did you ever see Ashkenazim putting on their talit after putting on the tefillin? They put their tefillin on first?
I've never seen that, no. But maybe they consider their tzitzit katan as their talit, let's say, and then they would put on tefillin. So it's not like they're ma'avirin al mitzvah. They just consider their, maybe, I'm just thinking, maybe they consider their tzitzit as their tzitzit katan that's already on them, that they put on. Then they put on their tefillin. And then when they get to shul, they put on their talit. I'm not sure. I've never seen it.
I never saw this practice. I never saw anybody do that. But the Darkei Moshe, if I remember correctly, was written by the Ramah, Rav Moshe Isserlis from Krakow. So presumably, the Ashkenazim normally we say are Yotzeim b'yad Ramah. So normally they would follow the opinion of the Rama. So I'm not sure. I never saw that practice though. Okay. All right. So when the mitzvah of tzitzit is only an institution of our Chachamim, the Artzot HaHayim in Siman Chafhei Seif Aleph ruled that even when one wishes to don a talit that is obligated to have tzitzit attached by virtue of our Chachamim's institution, and there is no Torah mitzvah of tzitzit involved, one must still put on the talit before the tefillin. For example, if someone is wearing a talit that he borrowed for longer than 30 days, or if he wears a talit made of cotton, he has no Torah obligation to have tzitzit attached to it. See the Yalkut Yosef Sisit, English edition, in Siman Tet and Siman Yud Dalet. Nevertheless, for Kabbalistic reasons, it is still necessary to put on the talit before the tefillin. Presumably because of what we stated above, that when one puts on the talit gadol, so he accomplishes a certain level of sanctity, and then only after is he ready for the sanctity of the. Only after is he ready for the level of sanctity of the tefillin. The Agur cited above stated that according to the Zohar, it's strictly forbidden to put on one's tefillin before the talit. His reference is to the Zohar on Bamidbar, page 120b. The Bet Yosef cited testimony from several Spanish Kabbalists that if someone is not wearing a talit katan, he should definitely put on his talit first and then his tefillin. But if he's wearing a talit katan, he should put on his tefillin before his talit gadol. They explain that as long as someone is wearing a talit katan, he has fulfilled the Zohar's mitzvah of tefillin. If he wishes to put on a talit gadol as well, that's a separate act, unconnected to the mitzvah of tefillin. Nevertheless, the Bet Yosef concluded that the common minhag is to always put on the talit gadol before putting on tefillin. So I think he's saying here, kind of along the lines which you were alluding to earlier, in that once you put on your talit katan, it seems that you've already fulfilled this obligation of putting the tzitzit first. You've already accomplished that level. Now you can put your tefillin on, and then afterwards you can put your talit gadol. But it seems to be that the common minhag, nonetheless, is still that once we put the tzitzit on, we put our talit katan on, then we put our tefillin on, and then we put our then we put our talit gadol on, and then we put our tefillin on. Always we put the talit gadol first. But if one didn't do that, it would seem that he would still have fulfilled that obligation, or that that level of sanctity, whatever that we're trying to acquire, if he had this tzitzit katan. So it wouldn't be like me'akev. It wouldn't be me'akev. Okay, let's see this next seif. Okay, we're up to now seif vav, which is the halacha of not touching the tefillin first. Okay, halacha vav says, "Hamanichin kisa tefillin ve'atalit letoch kis ahat." Somebody puts his tefillin inside the kuracha of his talit. Tzrichin lizaher shelo yaniho kisa tefillin lema'ala. He has to be careful that he doesn't put his tefillin bag on top of his talit, kidei shelo yifga'a bahem tehila, in order that he shouldn't touch them first. It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch in Seif Aleph. Ubidiavad, after the fact, kishepaga betefillin kodem talit. If a person touched his tefillin before the talit, לדעת מרן השולחן ערוך סעיף א', יש לו להניח התפילין תחילה. According to the opinion of Maran in Shulchan Aruch, he should put his tefillin first. Meaning, if a person put his hand inside of the bag, some people have like a small bag of tefillin, and they put it inside the kuracha that has their talit in it. So the tefillin bag and the talit are inside the same container. Nowadays, many people took on like a good practice of putting it in, like, they have a talit bag and a tefillin bag, and each one are separated within a larger bag. But in some people, they have just one talit bag, and they put the tefillin bag inside the bag of inside their kuracha. So if a person did that, he has the tefillin bag and the talit in the same bag, and he puts his hand in and he touches the tefillin first, according to Maran Shulchan Aruch, he should put the tefillin first. Mishum she'en ma'avirin ala mitzvot, because we don't pass over the opportunity to do a mitzvah. So once you touched the tefillin, you're now in the status of having an obligation to put on your tefillin. You now got the opportunity of putting on tefillin. According to Maran, you should put the tefillin on.
Rav Joey, I have a question.
Yes.
What if I touch the tefillin bag? What if I touch the tefillin bag? I didn't touch my tefillin, like the actual tefillin. I just touched the bag itself. Does that mean I would have to put on tefillin first, or it's only if I touch the tefillin that's inside the bag?
Yeah, so it seems just touching the bag.
You would already have to put on your tefillin before you put on your talit.
Yeah, it would seem just touching the bag is already sufficient, because according to what he said here, he said you put the pouch of the tefillin inside.
Yeah.
Right. So how would it be possible to touch the tefillin unless you open the pouch? And that would be maybe a little bit, then
I was
what's the
thinking maybe they put in one. Maybe they used to put their talit and their tefillin in one bag, not separate between them.
that for sure is would be problematic. But here he says even the pouch. He says kisa tefillin. He puts the pouch of the tefillin. It means your tefillin are in a bag. So even just touching the bag of the tefillin, that's already considered like now you're holding your tefillin, it seems.
Okay, thank you.
So now, fine. So that's the opinion of Maran. That's what we said. Maran says you should put in such a case, if you touch the tefillin bag first, so you put the tefillin on. Ulam, l'da'at mikubalim. However, according to the opinion of the Kabbalists, yesh lo lehavir ala mitzvah. He should skip that mitzvah. In such a case, he should not put the tefillin on yet. Kedei lo lehafech et haseder. In order that he shouldn't switch over the order. Meaning he should always put your talit should always come before the tefillin. Even in a case where you touch the tefillin first, still you don't do it. You put on the talit first. Re'eh ben Ishchai, Parashat Vayera, Seif Dalid, and Kaf HaChaim, Seif Katan Zayin. You can see more about this in the Ben Ishchai, in Parashat Vayera, in Seif number 4, as well as in the Kaf HaChaim in Seif Katan 7. והעיקר להלכה כשולחן ערוך שיניח התפילין תחילה. He says, however, the halacha follows the opinion of Shulchan Aruch, that one should put the tefillin first. You can see more about that in Yabia Omer, in Chelek 10, in Siman 55, in Ot 5. ולכן, המניחין הטלית וכיס התפילין לתוך כיס אחד. Therefore, somebody who puts the talit and the tefillin bag into one bag, יזהרו להניח כיס התפילין מן הצד של הטלית. You should be careful to put the tefillin on the side of the talit. ואם יניחו למעלה מן הטלית, נמצא פוגע בתפילין תחילה קודם הטלית. Because then if he puts it on top of the talit, it will come out that he's going to touch his tefillin before his talit. B'cha'amur, like we said. ואם יניח התפילין למטה מן הטלית, אין זה כבוד לתפילין. If he puts his tefillin below the talit, that's not considered kavod for the tefillin. So therefore, meaning what he's trying to say right now is that it's important. While we said you shouldn't put the tefillin on top of the talit. Why? Because you may touch the tefillin first. And according to Shulchan Aruch, you would then be obligated to put the tefillin on first, which we learned, according to the Mikubalim, is very bad. So he says, what are you going to do now? You can't put the tefillin under the talit because the tefillin is a higher level of sanctity, or at least according to some opinions, right? So then he says the best thing to do is you put them side by side. You put the talit on, let's say, the right-hand side, and you put the tefillin on the left-hand side, or vice versa. And this way, you can train yourself to when you put your hand in the bag, you're going to reach to a certain side, and you'll touch that one first. The kedushato hamura min talit, because the kedusha is of the tefillin is greater than that of the talit. The afal gav shu munach toch hakis ve'eno bigilui, because even though it is placed inside of the pouch and it's not revealed, nevertheless, even though the tefillin is in its pouch, you still should be careful not to put it beneath the talit. Therefore, you should put it on the side in order that he shouldn't touch it. Excuse me. All right, so if someone places the pouch of his tefillin inside the kuracha of his talit, he must take care not to place the tefillin in front of the talit. Because if he does, he's liable to touch the tefillin before he takes hold of the talit, to remove it and put it on. According to the Shulchan Aruch, if someone touches his tefillin first, he must put on the tefillin before putting on the talit. It is forbidden to let go of the tefillin and put on the talit first in this case, because of the rule stating ein ma'avirin al hamitzvot. It is forbidden to pass up on a mitzvah that has come to your hands. According to many mikubalim, however, even in this case, the person must put aside the tefillin and put on the talit first, since it is crucial to don a talit before putting on tefillin, as explained in the previous halacha. Nevertheless, the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch must be followed, and in this case, the person must put on his tefillin first and then his talit. It's interesting. I'm very curious of why that is, because normally we say that the rule is that when it comes to halacha, if there's a machloket between the Kabbalah and the halacha, we always go according to the halacha, except in cases of prayer. When it comes to prayer, the Kabbalah takes precedence. So it would seem that tefillin, is part of the prayers. So presumably, it should go according to the mikubalim. But here he says that we go according to Shulchan Aruch, even though that's the case. Maybe we could argue that the tefillin is not really part of the prayers. It's not a prayer itself. It's a mitzvah in and of itself. Maybe that's why he goes according to the Shulchan Aruch here. But definitely the Ben Ish Chai and the Kaf HaChaim ruled like the mikubalim, that you put the talit on first, even in such a case. But nonetheless, Chacham Ovadia clearly rules that one should put you should follow the practice of Shulchan Aruch and put the tefillin on first. Let's see what he says here. After Maran and the Bet Yosef established the fact that one is supposed to put on the talit before the tefillin, he added that one must take care not to place the tefillin in front of the talit and the kuracha, so that one will not touch the tefillin first and make it necessary to put on the tefillin before the talit in order to avoid infringing on the rule of ein ma'avirin al hamisvot. Maran added that regarding the tefillin themselves, if someone took hold of the tefillin shel rosh before putting on the tefillin shel yad, he must put it aside and put on the tefillin shel yad first, as will be explained below in Siman Chaf Chet. That is because the Torah specifically instructs us to put on the tefillin shel yad first, since the pasuk says, "Ukshartem leot al yadecha," it will be a sign on your arm, and then it says, "V'hayu letotafot beinecha," they will be ornaments between your eyes. The pronoun they signifies that as long as one wears tefillin shel rosh, one must be wearing both parts of the set. This Torah instruction overrules the principle of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot, which was instituted by our Chachamim. Regarding the talit and tefillin, however, there is no specific rule demanding that one be put on before the other. We put on the talit first because some poskim suggested that this is the preferable order. We must not transgress the rule of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot just in order to fulfill that suggestion. The Mikubalim, however, insisted that it is imperative to put on the talit first, even if it means ignoring the rule of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. This is the ruling of the Ben Ish Chai in Perashat Vayera Halacha Dalid and the Kaf HaChaim Sofer in Siman Chaf Hei Seif Zayin. In practice, the responsa Rav Pe'alim, that's a responsa that was written by the Ben Ish Chai of Yosef Chaim from Baghdad. He ruled that if someone had no talit and he put on his tefillin in the meantime, when his talit is finally brought to him, he must take off the tefillin, put on the talit, and then put on the tefillin again. Maran Rishon LeZion in response to Yabia Omer, volume 10, in Ot Nun Hey, Seif Hey, disagreed, arguing that according to Maran, it is certainly unnecessary to take off the tefillin in order to put on the talit. Furthermore, the Bet Yosef cited the Mikubalim of Spain, ruling that as long as someone is wearing a talit katan, he may put on his tefillin before his talit gadol. Therefore, one should not follow the ruling of the Ben Ish Chai and Kaf HaChaim. Okay, that's a very strong argument. The practical suggestion of the Or L'Tzion. So Chacham Ben Zion Abba Shaul gives us a practical suggestion to help us out of this predicament. The Or L'Tzion in Halak Bet in Daf Resh Pei suggested that it is possible to follow the Shulchan Aruch's ruling and yet not disobey the ruling of the Rav Pe'alim. In case someone touched his tefillin pouch before putting on his talit, he should put them both down and engage in some other activity, such as Torah study for a while. Then he can start all over again, picking up his talit without touching his tefillin and putting them on in the proper order. So the idea of the Or Lesion is if a person puts his hand in the tefillin, if a person puts his hand in the kuracha and he touches his tefillin bag first, so according to Shulchan Aruch, he has to put the tefillin on. According to the Ben Ish Chai and the Kaf HaChaim, he should put his talit on. So what does he do? So says the Or Letzion, why put your head between two great mountains? Instead, he says, go study some Gemara for 5 minutes. You put your stuff down, you go study some Gemara, and you start over. Now you had a hefsek. Now it's not in ma'avidin on the mitzvot. Now you're starting over. And you can do it in the proper order. The Halacha Birura, that's of the video Yosef, in page Yud Dalid, found fault with this suggestion, citing the Turei Even, the commentary to Masachet Megillah Daf Vav Amud Bet, who taught that if we're not allowed to put aside one mitzvah in order to perform a second mitzvah, we're certainly not allowed to put aside a mitzvah and engage in a third activity, whether it's a mitzvah or a mundane act. He cited proof from this from Rabbeinu Menachem HaMeiri. So the problem that the Halacha Birura has with the Or Letzion is you're telling me that in order to avoid the problem that Shulchan Aruch holds that it's in ma'avidin ala mitzvot, you're telling me go do something else. But how is that not in ma'avidin ala mitzvot? The point of in ma'avidin ala mitzvot is not that I shouldn't do one mitzvah in front of the other. It's that I shouldn't lose the opportunity of this mitzvah that I have right now, regardless of what I go do. So by going to do something else, I don't accomplish anything. But in defense of the Or Letzion, it could be that this case is different. Here, the person is not turning to another activity in order to belittle the importance of any mitzvah. On the contrary, since the poskim debated what a person should do when he touches his tefillin before his talit, this person wishes to turn to another activity so that he can come back to put them on later and fulfill both mitzvot in the ideal manner. This might not be considered an infringement on the rule of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot whatsoever. Meaning, since his intent here is not that I should skip the mitzvah, but that I want to do the mitzvah in the most ideal way. And since I have a safek with what that is, so I want to go do something else in order to avoid the safek, in order that I can do each thing in the lechatchila way. I don't want to have to do a mitzvah that, according to some poskim, would be b'di'avad. I want to do it in the lechatchila way. So I'm not in ma'avirin ala mitzvot. I'm doing ma'avirin ala mitzvot b'di'avad in order that I should be able to do it lechatchila. So maybe that you could say is the argument of the Or Letzion, and that would suffice for his practice. That seems to be the way, by the way. I don't know if that's the halacha. I don't know if that's how everybody practices, but that was the minhag that I had growing up. That was the custom I was taught, was that if you have your tefillin bag in your kuracha and you accidentally touch the tefillin bag, I was told you should close your kuracha and go do something else for a minute or two and then come back and take it out, following the suggestion of the Or Letzion. But definitely, if one is not going to do that, then one who follows the Hamovadia should put on the tefillin first, following the opinion of Maran in Shulchan Aruch. Okay, let's get back to the seif. Therefore, those who place the tefillin pouch inside the kuracha of the talit must take care to position the tefillin on one side. For if they would place the tefillin in front of the talit, it's likely that they will touch the tefillin first, as explained above. On the other hand, one should not place the tefillin underneath the talit, since the tefillin are far more sacred than a talit and deserve far more honor. Even though the tefillin are in their own cloth pouch, one must not position them underneath the talit. Therefore, one should always place the tefillin on the side of the talit. Okay, this is the ruling of the Ben Ish Chai in Pirashat Vayera, in Halacha Dalid, based on the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Chaf Hei Seif Aleph. Nowadays, it's common for people to have separate pouch for the tefillin and a kuracha for the talit, and to place both of them in a clear zippered nylon pouch with the tefillin in front nearest the zipper. This seems to run counter to Maran's rule that one must not place the tefillin on top of the talit in the kuracha, since one will have to reach over the tefillin in order to pull the talit out of the nylon pouch, thus infringing on the rule of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot, even if he does not touch the tefillin. Meaning, the way that we have our tefillin bags today, many of us have like a large outer bag, and we put a bag with a talit, and then we put the tefillin bags on top of it, inside of the big bag. So he says that's a problem, because when you open the zipper, so the first thing that should come into contact is the tefillin. So even if you avoid it and go to the talit bag, it still should be considered ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. It seems from the poskim, however, that as long as the person does not actually touch the tefillin pouch, he is not guilty of ma'avirin ala mitzvot, even though he reaches over the tefillin to reach the talit. In fact, according to the Eshel Abraham of Buchach, if someone touches the tefillin pouch without touching the tefillin themselves, he may put on his talit first. So he brings a defense for our practice, and he says that as long as he didn't touch the tefillin bag, it seems that there's no problem. And according to the Eshel Abraham of Buchach, which I think you alluded to this also earlier, you were asking, does it matter if it's the pouch or just the tefillin? So according to the Eshel Abraham, you have to touch the actual tefillin. But it seems other poskim hold no, even touching the pouch is already problematic. So, we could say that to defend our practice, we could say, first of all, he didn't even touch the tefillin pouch. And even if he touched the tefillin pouch, really, you could rely on the Eshel Abraham that, you have to touch the tefillin itself for it to be problematic. The best place would place them side by side. No, yes, the halacha would say the most preferable thing is to put them side by side. That's what we learned. That's what we learned. He says the truth is, it is likely that the Shulchan Aruch's warning not to place the tefillin on top of the talit does not apply to the pouches we use. In earlier times, the pouches were narrow, and so the talit was deep inside the pouch, and the tefillin close to its opening. To remove the talit, the person had to reach over the tefillin, which was problematic because of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. With the nylon pouches that we use today, however, one can place the tefillin on top of the talit and still reach the talit without coming close to touching the tefillin. Therefore, there's no issue of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. Like the tefillin bag that I have today, for example, I have like a large, it's like almost like a briefcase, like this large carrying case that I keep many things in. I have like my talit bag, and I have my the two tefillin bags on top of it. I have below the talit, like a little ketoret box, and sometimes they put like other things in this bag, and like, but the bag is so big, you can open the zipper. I'm able to reach whatever I want without touching anything else because the bag is so large. But it seems in their times, the bags were much smaller. People used to have a very small kuracha, and they would put like everything in one place. And so to reach over, you'd have to stick your hand over the tefillin. So it could be that there's maybe no issue even with our bags. The issue of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot applies as well to the mitzvah of lechem mishneh on Shabbat meals. The Shulchan Aruch ruled that on Friday evening, one must hold the two loaves, one on top of the other, while reciting the beracha of Hamusi, and then break the bottom loaf. The poskim pointed out that if the person sets aside the top loaf after reciting the beracha, he should be guilty of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. Some poskim reconciled this by saying that this rule applies when two mitzvot are in conflict, but when only one mitzvah is involved, and the question is which item to use for the mitzvah, one may choose either item. See Responsi Abia Omer, Chelek Het, in a footnote to Ot Lamed Bet. So just another example of this idea of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. On Friday night, we make Hamusi, say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, and then we raise up the bread, and we have one on top and we have one on the bottom. When we finish the beracha, we eat from the bottom loaf. So that bottom loaf, when we're eating from it, we're putting back the one on top onto the plate. He says that should be a problem of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot. Because how come you're not eating? You had this one in your hand, and now you're not eating from it. So he says no, because that's lechem mishneh is one mitzvah. So to pick which item in the mitzvah, that has nothing to do with. That's not like you're giving up the mitzvah. You're still performing the mitzvah. You're just using this side of the mitzvah as opposed to that side of the mitzvah. But here, talit and tefillin are two different mitzvot. That's why you can't bring a comparison from Lechem Mishneh. Maran Rishon LeZion in Hilchot Olam in Chelek Gimel on page Pei Hey ruled that when reciting the beracha while holding the 2 loaves of bread, one should hold the bottom loaf closer to him than the top loaf. In this way, the bottom loaf is the first one available to be eaten. According to this, we can do the same with the talit and tefillin in the nylon pouch. As long as the talit can be reached without passing our hand over the tefillin, we're not guilty of ein ma'avidin al hamitzvot. So, for example, if you have your talit bag set up in such a way where the zipper of the talit, the bag that actually holds your talit, is close to the entrance, that you don't have to put your hand over the tefillin in order to get to the talit, then you wouldn't have a problem. Okay, one last point here. Plastic container, plastic canister tefillin containers. A few decades ago, hard plastic canisters began to be sold as containers for tefillin, especially suitable for soldiers who need to carry their tefillin into the field while keeping them safe from damage. Later, when they added a talit pouch, which is wound around the container and latched onto it, those people who use those containers have no issue with the principle of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvot, since the talit is available before they begin to remove the lid of the tefillin container. So those canisters that they have, I'm sure you've seen them. It's very common. People come back from Israel and all of a sudden they're dressed like soldiers. So a lot of people tend to go for their year, and they come back with this tefillin bag that's like it looks like a thermos, and they have their tefillin inside this like thermos, and on the outside there's like a little pouch that clips on that they put the talit in. So that one has no problem whatsoever. The talit is very available on the outside. You can definitely use it. Okay, Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amin ve'amin.